So when it comes to do I stay or do I go, the first point I want to bring up is this notion of permission. And are you looking for permission to stay or permission to go? I believe a lot of insight can come from answering that question. Am I looking for permission to stay or am I looking for permission to go? And maybe not even answering the question fully, but just posing the question and seeing what arises. Now, there's no right or wrong answer to this question, and there may not be immediate clarity or an immediate answer. That's all okay. It's okay if asking the question brings up more questions or makes you feel uncomfortable, or maybe it does bring clarity, whatever it is. You may find that getting curious about the question and not rushing to an answer can be helpful. Here's what I mean by permission to stay versus permission to go. So let's say that you came across my Instagram page or you came across this podcast after feeling some confusion in your relationship. And maybe you saw a reel of mine saying something like, having doubts in a relationship doesn't automatically mean you have to leave. And maybe you felt really, really connected to that message. Like something drew you into the message. You were really curious about it. You wanted to understand it. Maybe you felt a sense of relief, but not necessarily a sense of relief like, oh, suddenly everything is perfect, but more just like, like this feels like a more helpful explanation than I've come across before, whatever it is. And maybe you had been beating yourself up for having doubts in your relationship. You had told yourself things like, I'm such a bad partner, or my partner doesn't deserve this. I really should leave this relationship. In this case, perhaps you were craving permission to stay in your relationship, even without certainty of what would happen in the future, even without guaranteeing that it's the right decision or the right choice. And even without a constant excitement about the relationship or about the future, because there's still a little bit of questions or doubts. Even without all of those things, perhaps you had been looking for permission to stay because you had never come across that permission before and you didn't feel comfortable giving it to yourself. You could have been craving someone to tell you that it's possible to navigate through anxiety and still decide to be with the person even without those guarantees. So that could have been you craving permission to stay. Or alternately, you could have been craving permission to leave, permission to go, permission to leave something that is good or even great and someone good or even great in the hopes of finding more. Now, of course, finding more is never guaranteed. We don't know what the next thing would be, but permission to leave in search of something more. Someone to tell you that it's okay to do that and that you're not a bad person for doing that. And so that would be an example of you perhaps craving permission to go and looking for somebody to give you that permission. That is the permission that I personally saw a lot of before coming across anyone talking about relationship anxiety or relationship OCD. I felt like that was the permission I kept coming across. Like, just, you can leave and find something better. And for me, that never quite fully sit right, or it never fully sat right with me. And who's to say exactly why that is? But it didn't ever quite fully sit right with me. Whereas when I came across somebody that did give me permission to navigate the mess and the uncertainty in my relationship, that did really feel like a permission slip. So that is the first question. Do you feel like you're looking for permission to stay? Or do you feel like you're looking for permission to go? And maybe even can you give yourself that permission without looking for it from somebody else? A reminder that there is no right answer to the question. There's only decisions that are made and then different outcomes that happen, which then brings me to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which was this notion of accepting whatever consequences come from our decision. So when we are asking the question of, is a relationship worth saving? Do I stay or do I go? We have to realize that there are many different potential outcomes to this decision. before making a decision, we can check in with ourselves and ask, am I willing to accept whatever consequences come from my decision? Or am I also willing to accept whatever lessons come from this decision as well? When it comes to the decision of staying or going in a relationship or from a relationship, there are so many potential outcomes. Now, I'm just going to read through some that popped up top of mind for me, but I really think that there are so many other combinations of feelings and experiences possible. I'll try to read through these and some of them that I brainstormed and see which ones, feel like they resonate or don't resonate to you. Maybe you've already thought about these things before. But some different outcomes, some different consequences that can come from a relationship decision would be you decide to stay in a relationship and you end up reducing the anxiety you experience in a relationship, and you're able to feel really grateful for the relationship and your partner and move forward. And for the most part in your life, you feel really grateful and connected. And of course, there may still be some challenges that come up, but you choose to stay, you reduce anxiety, and you feel really grateful for your relationship and partner. There's another potential outcome of staying in a relationship. You take the time to grieve that you may never know what life would actually look like if you had been with somebody else. And then this makes more space for gratitude and appreciation in the relationship. So this second one is similar to the first, but it involves a lot of like grieving what you'll never know and kind of grieving that unlived version of you. You could stay in a relationship. You could always wonder if it was the right decision and what life might have been if you made a different decision. And you could end up feeling so comfortable in the unknown that this just keeps you feeling one foot in and one foot out in the relationship. You could stay in the relationship and later find out that things are not working. And maybe you realize that no matter what you and your partner have tried, there's not really a willingness or an ability to support each other in the way that you need. And this could lead you to learn from the situation, learn from, what happened, and carry the lessons with you moving forward. So you may realize this isn't working and I can't be in this relationship anymore after originally deciding that you wanted to. And then take that with you and learn and see, how can I take this lesson moving forward? You could also stay in a relationship, find out things are not working later and that you need to leave the relationship for some reason because maybe your partner or you are unwilling to support one another. And then this could lead, instead of you looking for the lessons in this and instead of you learning from it, this could lead to you feeling frustrated that you made the wrong decisions and just being kind of frustrated with yourself and like, I can't believe this. So notice how all of those different combinations could come after choosing to stay in a relationship. And there's probably hundreds more other outcomes. But those are all different consequences. Some are like more helpful, some are less helpful, that come from choosing to stay in a relationship. Now, there's the alternate side, which is choosing to end a relationship. And you could end a relationship and initially feel really sad that the relationship ends. And then even after the initial time of feeling sad, there could be this part of you that's wondering, like, did I make the right decision or not? And maybe you eventually move on to find a new relationship and realize, all right, I'm really grateful that I left this first relationship to start a new one. Or on the flip side of that, you could end a relationship, feel sad that the relationship ended. You always wonder if it was the right decision. And then you eventually move on and find a new partner, but you end up experiencing the same anxiety once things get more serious. And you realize, ooh, okay, this seems like a me pattern that I want to work on because I keep seeing the same pattern coming up. You could end a relationship and there could be a sense of relief that you no longer feel anxious. You move on and find a new relationship and you feel grateful about moving on. You never look back at the old decision. Or you could end a relationship, feel relief that you ended the relationship, but when you move on and find a new one, again, you experience that same anxiety and realize this is a you pattern to work on. So there are so many combinations. You could also just end a relationship and be single. Or you can stay in a relationship for a long time and then at some point decide it's not working for me and I want to be single, whatever it is. There are so many freaking combinations and consequences of these decisions. And sometimes I think we just think it's going to be such a simple thing. Like, I'm just going to leave this relationship and then my dream partner would just fall into my lap. That's kind of what the Instagram algorithm likes to say. I think there's a lot of reels that are floating around these days of like, oh yeah, I left something good, but then I ended up finding someone great and we lived happily ever after. It's still kind of that happily ever after story, right? But there's also so many people that I know behind the scenes or friends of friends or whoever it is that they're also still actively trying to find someone. And there's a lot of people that are saying, you know, things are really hard and it's really hard to find a great relationship. So I say none of this to like scare you. It's just important to be aware that sometimes we get stuck in the grass is going to always be greener mentality. But there are many different consequences that can come from our decisions. And we have to be fully willing to accept the responsibility that whatever decision we make, we are the only one that is living in that decision. And we are the ones that are responsible for taking the lessons from that decision and trying to use the lessons to grow in whatever way we can.